Hello, and welcome to the Nebraska Department of Education Positive Behavior Intervention and Support 10-Minute Tidbit. Today's topic is systematic supervision. My name is Heather Robbins, and I'll be your host throughout the 10-Minute Tidbit series. Our purpose here is to provide Nebraska K-12 school teams assistance with installation, initial implementation, and full implementation of PBIS practices on their campuses. We hope that these short video vignettes support you in your implementation efforts. Today's topic is systematic supervision, and we hope that by the end of our short time together, you're able to describe the key features of systematic supervision and that you begin to determine a systematic supervision plan for your campus. Why systematic? We want to be methodical in our procedure or plan. This goes beyond being simply active. We want folks to be methodically, systematically supervising students on our campus. What is systematic supervision? It's a method of student behavior support and management that involves 3 types of activities by supervisors. First, engaging in active supervision. Next, responding to appropriate and inappropriate behavior. And finally, employing a team-based approach to implementing and maintaining our supervision plan. Systematic supervision occurs in many locations across our campus. Often when we think of systematic and/or active supervision, we think of our common areas like the playground, the hallways, the cafeterias, perhaps the bus zone, the quad. But we want to remember also that these same practices apply in the classroom. And in reality, we are all systematic supervisors across our campus all the time. Before we move forward, we're going to take a moment to have a little prequel to systematic supervision. It's very important that we have expressly and clearly defined our expectations for our various locations on our campuses, and then we've explicitly taught them to students. So we need to come together, get on the same page about expectations for students on the playground, in the cafeteria, in the hallway, at assemblies. What do we want the expectations to look and sound like? And then they need to be explicitly taught to students so that we can then effectively be good supervisors. So the prequel is expectations need to be clearly defined and they need to be explicitly taught for students across the various locations of our campus. Now we're ready to engage in the features of systematic supervision, the first of which is to move in our area. We want to continually move in a randomized pattern within our area. So as much as possible, we want to make it random so that we're a little bit unexpected in nature. So we move, we're randomized movements, we're moving regularly in our area, and we want to target any problem areas that we're aware of and be intentional. Make sure we check into those areas. In case there's a little hidey hole or a place that you can't see as well, checking into those areas. So the first core feature is to move as we're supervising in our area. Right now, I'm going to ask you as a team to do a quick draw. I'd like you to get out some blank paper and make a sketch or a map of an area that you supervise on your campus. You could select the area of greatest concern to begin with, or you could select an area that all of you regularly supervise, whatever makes the most sense for your team. Draw out a map of that area, kind of draw out any areas of, or note any areas of concern and identify them and talk about them, and then draw out what purposeful movement patterns might look when we're supervising that location. For instance, if you draw out your playground, perhaps you draw out quadrants that people supervise and move throughout. That might be an example. So I'm going to encourage you to pause the video and do a quick draw to make a map of a space that you supervise, identify areas of concern, and draw some purposeful movement patterns in that location. Welcome back. So now we have a map to look at or a sketch to consider, which is a helpful tool and resource for all of us to know where we're supervising, what our locations of concern are, and maybe what kind of movement patterns we might want to have, although we know we need to randomize them. We also need to scan as we're moving, and we scan with our eyes and our ears. While we're scanning, we're listening for and looking for students engaged in the appropriate behaviors that we've taught, so we can acknowledge that. We're also listening and looking for any behaviors of concern so we can respond instructionally or provide support. We also want to make sure that we, again, are scanning both with our eyes and our ears any of those areas that we identified as areas of a little bit more concern. So we want to make sure that we're using both auditory and visual cues, moving and scanning regularly, not standing in one place, but having our eyes and ears open to what's happening around us. While we are moving and scanning, we have an amazing opportunity to have positive contact with students. Positive, non-contingent contact with students. Hey, great to see you today. Wow, nice haircut. We missed you yesterday. Glad to hear your dog is doing better. This is an excellent opportunity to forge relationships with students as we systematically supervise and to simply get to know the students better as people as they attend school on our campus. Positive contact. While we are moving and scanning and providing positive contact, we may also engage in some positive reinforcement. We might give some performance descriptive feedback. You all remember to be respectful and use quiet voices in the hallway. So we're giving performance descriptive feedback that specifically describes the behaviors, the desired behaviors the students are engaging in. And we may also just give thumbs up and, air fives for students. Your campus may do some kind of formalized recognition or acknowledgement system, and in which case we may pair our verbal delivery with a coupon ticket or maybe a postcard or some other form of tangible acknowledgement. This is not required. Where we really want to get to is 5-to-1 positive to negative interactions between adults and students minimally, and we really would like it to be way more than 5-to-1. Some of our things that we're going to do are going to be whole group, hey, you guys are just doing an awesome job, and may not have all that performance descriptive feedback, and other times we want to make sure we're engaging in that very specific performance descriptive feedback, particularly of behaviors we need to see repeated more often in the future. So we want to get to that 5-to-1. We want to move. We want to scan with our ears and our eyes. We want to connect with students in non-contingent ways. And then we want to give positive reinforcement contingent upon behavior. Specifically, we want to increase our verbal performance, positive performance descriptive feedback to students as we're moving and scanning and connecting. Now, sometimes students are going to be engaged in behaviors we have not taught and we do not care for in a location. And we want to begin by responding instructionally. We want to make sure that we respond immediately, that we give low-level responses for low-level behaviors, not an overreaction, but an instructional response, perhaps just with a reminder or a cue of what's supposed to be done. Remember, we need to go up the slide with our feet, up the ladder on the slide, one at a time. Let's practice that. Show me. Great, you remembered to do that. So we can do a lot of remember tos and show me that are reminders of the expectation and are an instructional and corrective type of response versus a punitive sit on the bench, which is non-instructional, or you got a referral, which is non-instructional. For low-level behaviors, we want to have low-level responses that are instructional in nature and support the student engaging in desired behavior in our common areas and classrooms. We want to make sure we're fair, we're neutral, and that we're consistent and non-argumentative with students. So our tone and body language during an instructional response matter greatly. We want to have low affect and just be non-argumentative, non-critical, a neutral tone, more business-like in nature. Remember to show me how. Awesome, you did it. Thank you very much. So instructional responses for behavior whenever possible. And then we want to make sure that we're collecting some information on our common areas. So we need to have team-driven data-based decisions. So we need to be able to have access to the data, and we need to have a team that meets minimally monthly. We need to give our supervisors an opportunity to talk about how supervision is going on our campus. We also want to make decisions. Perhaps we need to revisit the rules for Foursquare. Perhaps we need to stagger the lunch schedule just a little bit more. We want team-driven, data-based decisions using our problem-solving process. Here are some to-dos for you to consider. Have you defined and taught the expectations for the various locations on your campus? Have you mapped out supervision movement patterns? Do you have a plan to reinforce and acknowledge students? Do you have a plan to respond instructionally? What's your system for collecting and analyzing data, and how often is that going to occur? And what do you need to communicate out, and how will that happen? And then how do you go about training all staff members in a systematic approach to supervision? We hope that today you're able to describe the core features of systematic supervision: movement, scanning, positive contact, positive reinforcement, instructional responses, and team-driven data-based decision-making, and that you have already begun to determine a systematic supervision plan for your campus. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next 10-minute tidbit.